Chapter 17. So This Is Love. August didn't care how much attention he was drawing to himself by approaching her directly. He had no idea who she was, but her smile. There was something terribly familiar about the crook of her lips. "Excuse me," he said as he neared, but she was too entranced by the sight of the palace to hear him. He gently touched her gloved hand. "Mademoiselle?" She startled and spun, hands slipping from his grip. The sudden loss racked him with a sorrow he didn't understand. August bowed to hide the sudden emotion. "Apologies for surprising you," he said, flexing his hand. Her long gloves were a thin, shimmering lace, and yet the warmth of her touch lingered. She curtsied, not quite as deeply as politeness demanded, and couldn't quite keep her gaze on him. "It's my first time here, and I never realized how lovely it was." "Its loveliness pales in comparison to you," he said, and rose from his bow. "I'm August." "August," she repeated slowly, and the sound of his name from her lips made him smile. Then she seemed to remember that she needed to offer him her hand. "I'm Ella." August had always abided by the rules of propriety, even if he didn't care for them. They were essentially a secret language among nobles that revealed instantly one's station, and her movements, though graceful, were stiff. He took her hand in his and pressed a chaste kiss to the back of it. She blushed a rosy pink. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ella," he said, and pulled away. Perhaps she was a governess or a seamstress taking advantage of the opportunity to attend a ball. She had to be, with such an exquisite outfit. From afar, her gown had appeared blue. The material was thin and opalescent, shifting from silvery gray to icy blue with every movement, like moonlight caught in the rippling water. She moved it with an unamusing grace and held herself as if she was savoring everything around her, from the dress to the palace as a dream about to dissolve. The baubles in her ears weren't jewels, but glass blown in perfectly smooth circles. "Would you like to know a secret?" she whispered. He leaned in close and whispered back, "I would like nothing else more." "I'm not entirely sure what we're supposed to do at balls," she said, "especially when everyone is standing around. There's supposed to be dancing, but since there are so many people here, the rules are out the window." "Pity. They're lovely windows." "Don't worry. We open them before we throw the rules out." He offered her his other hand and turned toward the dance floor. "Would you like to dance?" She curled her fingers around his palm. "I would love to, but it has been a while since my last dance." The music shifted from a lively minuet to a waltz, and August chuckled. For once, he was grateful for his father's meddling. Unfortunately, he and Ella drew nearly every pair of eyes as they approached the dance floor. August risked one glance at his father. He was gesturing wildly while the Grand Duke tried to corral him, and the light in the hall dimmed as several curtains closed. The crowds around the floor rippled, people whispering to each other. Ella's eyes widened, and she looked around at everyone watching them. She stiffened, and August squeezed her hand, trying to distract her. She smiled at him. "You're sure?" she asked. "Trust me," said August, and despite having just met him, she nodded. His chest tightened. Maybe his father was onto something with all this romantic setup nonsense. They slipped into position with a quiet understanding, and she raised her chin with a confidence he hadn't possessed at his first ever ball. There was something familiar about the tilt of her head and blue of her eyes. "Do you live in the city?" he asked. "No, the countryside," said Ella. "I haven't ever left until now, to be honest." That was it. The blue of Fresno's spring skies. "Have you managed to see any of the city?" He spun them, turning so her back was to the prying eyes of the Tremaine family. She laughed gently. "No, only what I could see from the steps of the palace. The castle has some of the best views in the city, especially at night," he said. "Do you like stargazing?" "Does anyone not?" she asked, cheeks dimpling when she smiled. At night, if I'm still working, I like to sit outside whenever I can. It's much more peaceful. And beautiful, I imagine, said August, trying to picture how her eyes would glitter under the night sky. What do you do for work? Nothing this interesting. She peered over his shoulder and then tilted her head back slightly. Are there usually this many people here? August smiled, ignoring her deflection. No, this is fairly unusual. I thought other people would join in the dancing, said Ella, her fingers tightening around his hand. She had clearly expected some eyes to watch them, but she still looked nervous. Very, very nervous. And seemed to be trying her best to follow etiquette. He didn't want to subject her to more scrutiny. It wasn't her fault that the nobility of Charmant was so nosy. She was doing well for her first meeting with the prince. Then let's leave and hope they get the message, he said. Courtiers are required to gossip at least once per day. He loved the way it felt when she laughed, his palm flush against her ribs, and privy to every shuddering breath. Since it's so late, they're desperate to hit their quota. He gently pressed his hand into her side and directed them toward the balcony. With any luck, Gran would keep them away from prying eyes. The curtains fell, separating them from the ballroom and leaving them alone on the balcony. August steered her farther from the windows. There are guards out here, of course, but no gossips, he said, and spun them so that she could take in the view, and so that he could take in her joy at it. August couldn't shake the feeling that they had met before, but he had met so many people on his travels. He wasn't so foolish as to think he could remember all of them. Surely he would have remembered her, though. He was sure she couldn't reveal her family name if she wouldn't even share what she did for work, and he didn't want to pry too hard. By the end of the night, he hoped she would have grown comfortable enough to open up to him. Beneath the indigo swath of evening, the stars glittered like pale fire in her eyes. She tilted her head back and closed them, mouth slightly open. Her gaze slid from the bow of her lips to the bared arch of her throat. She exhaled slowly. The air is different here, she said softly. It smells like oranges and roses. He brushed a loose curl from her neck. The gardens are magnificent, if I do say so myself, said August. He wanted nothing more than to watch her eat an orange, and didn't have the faintest clue why. It was as if the reason was on the tip of his tongue. This wasn't quite love, but it felt as potent. Would you like to see them? She nodded and beamed at him. He would have given her a greenhouse, the royal gardens, or any number of state secrets, if she asked right then. August twirled her toward a set of low stairs that led from the balcony and into the gardens proper. A fountain rippled in the quiet night, and they walked hand in hand to it. He was so taken by the weight of her hand in his and the rustle of her breath against his collar that he barely noticed them slip into a dance. They didn't stumble or step on the other's toes as if they were flying, as if they had danced together before. But that was impossible. She knelt over the water and dipped her hand through the night's reflection. The stars feel closer, she whispered, staring not at the sky or the water but at him. They had abandoned the waltz long ago, but he kept his hand in his. He kept her hand in his. With a gentle tug, he spun her away from the fountain. An odd thing for a star to say, he said. Here one is, glittering in the garden next to me, and you haven't even noticed. She let out a soft laugh and glanced at him through her lashes. Don't stars burn? If I were a star, I'm afraid the garden would be nothing but ash. Perhaps I prefer cinder to roses. He pulled her closer as they walked across a short bridge. The pale stones clacked under their shoes, the sounds oddly loud in the calm night. Ella tucked herself against his side, her arms securely through his, and August led her up a set of wide stairs. The palace loomed over them, and the shadows flickered across the high windows of the ballroom, where everyone else had finally started dancing. Ella sighed, gripped his hand tighter. He stopped at the top of the stairs. We don't have to go back inside yet, he said, and he helped her sit on the low banister. Honestly, I prefer this. Talking to you is like talking to an old friend. His father was going to be insufferable the next day. I feel like that too, she said, pulling him to sit next to her. Was this quiet vulnerability an inexplicable draw? This comfortable and desire he couldn't extinguish with thoughts of reason truly love? He slid his hands up her arms, brushing a thumb against the bare skin there. She leaned in as if to kiss him, and August bowed his head to do the same. Her breath whispered against his lips. Then, the clock struck midnight. Ella pulled away and gasped, "Oh!" She stared at the distant clock tower in horror. "Oh, my goodness!" "What's the matter?" he asked, disappointment coursing through him. She rose and said, "It's midnight." "Yes, so it is," said August, confused by her sudden change. It hadn't been that far from midnight when she arrived. He reached for her. "But why, goodbye," she said, and turned away. No, wait." He caught her wrist and stopped her at the top of the stairs. "You can't go now." He had never met anyone and instantly felt at home with them, and she had, by all accounts, appeared to feel the same. What did it matter if it was midnight? The ball would carry on until dawn, like most did. "Oh, I must, please," she said, and pulled away again. "Please, I must." "But why?" he asked, taking both of her hands in his. "Well, I... Her expression faltered, and she carefully took a few steps away. "Oh, the prince! I haven't met the prince." "The prince?" He nearly laughed. "But didn't you know?" The bells tolled again, and she gathered up her skirts to run. "Goodbye!" August sprinted after her. "No, wait! Come back! Please come back!" August's mind reeled, chasing her when she was so insistent to leave. Felt wrong, but he didn't want to lose her. He didn't even know her full name. "Oh no, I don't even know your name. How will I find you?" he cried out, sprinting after her. "Wait! Please, wait!" She ducked beneath the curtains and into the ballroom, and he barreled through them after her. "Wait!" he called out again, but Ella was already a quarter of the way across the room. "The prince!" The crowd at the edge of the dance floor swarmed him. August groaned. The Grand Duke huffed after Ella, chasing her in his steed. August tried to slip away from the crowd, refusing dance requests and turning down invitations to take a turn from about the gardens, but there were far too many. Slowly he made his way out of the crowd toward the Grand Duke. He caught the older man at the top of the steps. "Did you let her go?" "Your Highness," said Gran, cradling something in his hands. "I am so sorry, but I failed you." August eyed his hands. "Did you push her down the stairs?" "August!" He harumphed and held out the shoe. "I'm afraid she got away. I've sent out the guards who were on duty tonight, and I am sure they will chase down her coach. They will certainly catch her." "She wanted to leave." "Needed to. If her panic was anything to go by, you didn't need to send guards to hunt her down," August said, turning the shoe over and over in his hands. "It couldn't be real." "A glass slipper?" "She's neither a criminal nor required to marry me because I liked her." "His Majesty was very clear that tonight must be successful," said the Grand Duke. His father had to stop threatening to behead Gran. It was making them both far too jumpy. "My father may be as clear as he likes, but the final say is mine." August held the shoe up to the light. It was pure glass. The craftsmanship was exquisite, and the fit must have been perfect for it not to be painful to walk on. There couldn't be that many people in Charmont or anywhere else who could make something so delicate and functional. He had never heard of such a thing. "Tracking the person who made this will help us find her, but she knows where to find me. I don't want to hunt her. She isn't a deer." "Really, how many Ellas could there be in Charmont?" "Your father will give you alternative orders, I'm sure. Don't let anything happen to the shoe. I'll try to find out who made it," said August, and he handed the Grand Duke the glass slipper. "It's odd, though." Like her, the sparkling but sturdy glass felt familiar. It was cool to the touch when it should have been warm, and each clack of his nails against the glass rang out like a small bell. What did this remind him? What is it, Your Highness? The Grand Duke asked. Sorry, said August, shaken from his thoughts. What? The Grand Duke smiled consolingly. What's odd? All of it. The shoe, her flight, and all the moments they spent together that felt as if they had already happened. The whole time he had been with her, the whole hollow hole in his chest hadn't ached once. Nothing, he muttered, shuddering. I feel like I knew her. In the back of his mind, a voice that sounded suspiciously like Martin dredged up all his fears. People in Fresno had been forgetting those they had loved for years, and he had messed with the lockbox that morning. But no, only the pocket watch had been inside of it, and he had no proof it was from the memorial. He was being dramatic. If he had known Ella and forgotten her, someone would have noticed. So why did he feel so uneasy?